Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. It's just me, Bella, today for a nice little solo episode. It's going to be on the shorter side, and I'm excited to get into it because relationships, divine partnership, it is so transformational to really dig your mind into how to make the most of the relationships you have and how to go deeper and how to bring more love into your relationships. And this is going to be an episode that's going to be very, very helpful for anyone in a relationship, anyone who hopes to be in a divine partnership in the future, or anyone who just really wants to understand how to bring more love and acceptance and understanding into their relationships, and as a result, have an experience of relationship that is truly just wonderful and uplifting and expansive and adds so much joy to your life while supporting who you are and the person you've always been meant to be. So today I'm going to share about a couple of lessons, 3 exactly lessons that I have learned from my partnership. I've been in a relationship for, it'll be 8 years in March. We have been dating since I was 19, and it's been the biggest area of learning and growth and expansion and challenge and depth and intimacy, the biggest area in my entire life. And I'm excited because these are lessons I've not only learned in my relationship, but things that I've also picked up on and realized through this book I'm reading called A Course in Miracles, and also just in life and all that. This is the book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy. This is like the companion text that goes really well with, or it's literally the companion text for A Course in Miracles, the larger text. And I've been starting with this because it breaks down the lessons really beautifully. So I'm going to reference it a little bit. Strap in, get excited. And if you're new here, welcome. It's so nice to have you. Normally, it's me and my co-host, Nikki. This is the Out of Our Minds podcast, and we bring consciousness to any and all topics within not just spirituality, but culture, relationships, self-discovery, career, entrepreneurship, creativity, all the things. And it's such an honor to have you here. If you've been an OG and you've been along for the ride, thank you for tuning in, for taking the time out of your day. And the last thing I'll say before I dive in is to like this episode if you're watching it on YouTube. Maybe leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And yeah, we feel like this is a really big year for the show. So any and all support from the OOMIEs, that's you guys, is so appreciated and just really goes a long way. So let us dive into divine partnerships. What happens in relationships is that we basically write stories about our love, about our experience with this person. We write these stories and they live in our mind, in our body, in our subconscious, and they get played out in our relationship. And it's because as humans, we are very, very good at attaching meaning outside of the truth of the present moment. What that means is like we basically will look at something and we will start to extrapolate characteristics about it that are not necessarily true to that thing in and of itself, like almost as if the thing was in a vacuum. And of course, life doesn't function in a vacuum. Things tend to be in relation to the other, right? It's like up suggests down, right? There's a duality. But we do this a lot in relationships to the detriment of the relationship. And I am sure you or someone you know has just had an experience where something happened, you went somewhere, you had some sort of experience with a person, a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and you interpreted this situation completely differently than the other person. And then maybe you talked about it, or maybe you became upset, or maybe you had some emotional reaction to a situation. And then maybe later on, you have this epiphany that you just basically made up that perception and that it's effectively an illusion. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or that you are delusional, right? It just means that you let your assumptions and the characteristics and meanings outside of the situation to kind of take on a life of its own. And you used it as a way to prove maybe like a story or belief that you consciously wouldn't want to be true, but it ends up being true. So what I'm getting at is that in relationships, we basically take past instances and we superimpose them on the present reality, right? We recall a scenario that didn't go the way we wanted to. We recall something about ourselves from childhood, consciously or subconsciously, and we superimpose it on top, right? Like if you've ever watched those, like a video where there's like an image of a beach and then there's like a faded image of a person on top of it, that's what it means to superimpose. You're placing something that is not naturally there on top of the scenario. And even if that present state reality is in a state of love, sometimes we bring in the past or we bring in an unlived future and we let that tarnish the possibility of being in a state of love. And love is something that's really hard to define. I honestly think it can't be defined because it is such an expansive state of being that really is just has the essence of who we are. And it's like, how do you ever describe accurately what it is that we are and what this whole universe is and this entire experience? But we all have some idea of what love is, and I believe that we're here to get closer and closer to the truth of it. So for now, just work with your definition of love and partnership and acceptance and understanding and all those feelings that make your heart grow bigger and make your chest expand and make you exhale and make you feel safe and calm and whole and accepted. These are the energies of love. So in terms of divine partnership, a divine partnership is a place where two souls come together to remember who they are and to mirror back to the other what they believe about themselves. This is just kind of my own definition of a divine partnership. I'm sure there's a lot of literature on what it means to be in a soul contract with someone, what it is to be in a relationship, not just unconsciously, but in conscious love. And it's the place where the deepest parts of yourself come to the surface via the other person mirroring things to you, via the experiences, the triggers, the traumas, the hard conversations, the hardships, the places that you go together, physically speaking, metaphorically speaking, spiritually. It will be the playground that brings up the most things about your inner self. If you don't think that you are good enough for your partner, you'll experience a perceived reality of your partner not thinking you are good enough, right? It's the whole point that the inner story comes out in reality through your partnership. And I'll get into more of that later because I think it's a really important point to discuss. But yeah, to give you more examples, it's like if you don't think that you contribute enough to the relationship, that inner thought will manifest in the relationship. And this is basically how fear sneaks in to the door. So I'm giving you these examples because I want to illustrate how fear is something to really bring consciousness to, because fear is really the energy or vibration, let's call it, that starts to take away the possibility of a relationship to be in the expression of love, right? In its truest form. And as it relates to A Course in Miracles is really about how to shift away from fear towards love. And fear is such an important thing to get familiar with because it's can be really quiet. It can be really not obvious, and it can just sneak up on you. It's like you thought that things were all sealed up and you closed the door tightly and nothing bad was going to come in, and then you didn't realize that fear was right there with you and came inside, and you're like, oh my God, why am I having these problems? Oh fuck, I didn't realize I've been operating from fear. And I think it's so powerful to really explore and push the kind of like limits of what you think is of the areas of relationship that you think are operating from fear versus love, because there's the really obvious ones like the fear of not being good enough, or that if your partner finds out about this trauma in your past that they won't love you anymore. There's the fear that they will leave you. There's the fear that your lust and passion will fizzle out, right? These are the bigger ones that are more obvious because maybe you've thought about them before, or like every other freaking romantic movie is about these fears, or yeah, they're just bigger and more clear. But what I'm really interested in is these smaller fears. These ones that take years to notice because they don't really come out until you've gone very deep with your partner. And it's all the little tiny, tiny ways. A lot of times these are like energetic things, the ways that we've outsourced the job of validation and approval to our partner. And in that process, we diminish ourselves and our worth. And it's kind of like insidious in a way because, again, it's tiny. It's like this micro energy that at first is harmless because it's okay. It's normal. Like, we're not perfect. Our relationship starts out and it's like the beginning of this marathon where we are going to have ups and downs and flows and highs and lows. And we're kind of meant to come to a point where the fears come up. That is the whole point. So let me just also add in here that there is literally no shame at all if you are listening to this and thinking, "Oh my God, my relationship is run by fear," because it's so normal and it's so part of the journey. And this is the beauty of bringing consciousness to it, because immediately, like 90% of the work when it comes to dealing with fear and bringing love in instead is literally just the awareness of it, is just looking at yourself and whatever experience you're having and being like, okay, I see it for what it is. This is okay. This is something that I have developed, probably because maybe X, Y, and Z, or maybe there is no reason and it's just sort of plopped in here and it's okay. And I'm bringing consciousness to it, which is 90% of the work, because from there, it is so much easier to pick a new storyline to go down, which we'll get into. So in A Course in Miracles Made Easy, this one by Alan Cohen, the author points out this common language in relationships and in kind of like movies and the media around relationships. So that's kind of where the conditioning could come from, is this language of my other half, or you complete me, or all these stories that basically feed the idea of not enoughness, or that you need someone else in order to feel okay. And it's so real and it's so tricky because it is, I think, really admirable and beautiful to find someone in life that you look to with such googly eyes, in the sense of how incredible and how smart and awesome and fun and funny and expansive, and they just make you feel so good. Like, that is the beauty of life. We're here to feel things so deeply. And I'll be the first to tell you that healing, like, I don't think we should ever force ourselves to heal ourselves out of the natural humanness. Like, the whole point of even A Course in Miracles is to just see our humanness as this almost like cute, fun thing that we are experiencing on purpose to tap into deeper levels of love. So it's like, yeah, it's okay if you said, you are my other half. I could never exist without you. I think that comes from a higher place, but in 3D, in like the day to day, that's where you want to notice how that is playing out into a story that's actually diminishing your worth and not expanding it. Because it's like the idea of a twin flame, or like a soul flame relationship where you are made for each other and you're entangled and one cannot be described without the other. That's like the idea of entanglement, basically. And I think it's so beautiful. And I think that can exist in a state where we are also viewing ourselves, and we've done the work to be whole and fully worthy just as we are, and we don't quote unquote need someone to prove that. So that's where partnership really becomes a partnership in the sense of the word, when you can uproot those stories that make you think that you aren't good enough, and where you can have it be a container to come back to yourself and to really see yourself as whole. Because when you do that, it changes the energy of the relationship fully. I can tell you so many examples. I'll just give you a couple. Like, I just have in the past year really shifted the ways that I show up in my relationship, and it's something that I'm still working on, and I'll share these kind of things that I'm working on in the lessons part of this. But that just by doing the inner work of seeing myself as smart enough, worthy enough, like not even just enough, just worthy, period, right? Like good enough at my job, like ambitious enough, whatever the little stories are that I thought maybe I wasn't doing a good job. By just shifting the energy to saying, okay, I'm not here to like prove to my partner that I can accomplish X, Y, and Z. I'm here to prove that to myself, because I bring that energy into the partnership. And that's where it plays out in the subtle energetic ways that aren't obvious. And it's really different for everyone. And it's such a personal experience. Every relationship is different. Every person is so different. And so much of this really comes down to being so present and accepting of what you and your partner are going through individually and as a unit, that is also how you start to bring love into it. So, okay, to recap kind of the goal, and it's like where we're moving from, bringing awareness to the patterns that might be rooted in fear. We are going toward a state of partnership that is rooted in a type of love and acceptance and understanding that allows you to go very, very deep, that allows you to really come home to yourself and to be a home base for each other. It's like, what's the point of doing the healing? What's the point of even recognizing when fear comes in? Number one, your relationship is going to be a lot more fun and enjoyable and really in its highest expression when it is operating more on the side of fear. Or sorry, when it's operating more on the side of love than fear. Number two, you will really take back a lot of your power that you've outsourced to your partner when it comes to those feelings of worthiness and being enough and being good and accepted and loved and all the things. It takes the power back, and you're no longer a victim to the illusions that you've put onto your partner and the expectation that they're going to fix you and finally say the one thing that you needed to hear in order to feel okay about yourself. You take the power back and you bring that into your own responsibility, which frees up then your partner to be who they really are and to actually provide for you the thing that they are meant to provide for you, which is not your controlling version of what the holes are in you that you're trying to have them fill, but actually when you come into it whole, then their beauty and their gifts and their essence actually plays out the way that it is divinely meant to and is not being forced to do something because you're coming to it from lack. And then I think this also just gives you a lot of language and awareness to work with so that you don't feel so helpless anymore and kind of even hopeless when things do ebb and flow in a relationship and you maybe do have a fight or a hard conversation, because having the awareness of like maybe shifting away from fear is actually going to help me handle this hard conversation and not be afraid of the hard conversations anymore. So that's really what I want to help you realize here is I'm about to get into the 3 major lessons that I've learned from partnership and that I will be working on into the future. And they are really just so that you see like there is hope. You're not a victim. You are enough, and you can completely change the experience of your relationship by focusing on these things. So let's get into the 3 lessons from partnership and the things that I really am focusing on. I share from my perspective because just as someone who's been in a relationship for a while, not even just about the time, but really just the depth of it. And the feeling that just I really feel like part of my work is I'm learning so much from being in this partnership, and it's something so sacred to me that holds so many lessons. And so teaching from it just is really important to me, and I think it helps. So, number 1 is that being honest, direct, and real about each other's stuff is and can be an expression of love and does not have to mean that you or your relationship is broken. And this is something I wanted to talk about because people just tend to shy away, myself included, guilty in the past, probably will be guilty of it in the future because we're learning. People just tend to shy away from the hard conversations because they require hardness sometimes instead of softness to be most effective. And you can use your discernment and your judgment here to know what I mean here in terms of where the line is and what a hard conversation is versus something that's not rooted in like being effective or loving, etc. But a partnership that is meant to go deep and be truly soul-fulfilling is one that is going to bring up the most stuff. Like literally picture, outside of just the fact that you are these physical bodies, you are these 2 souls that are interacting so often that the way that like, kind of think about it like energetically, when something interacts in such a complex, layered way, those 2 things become so familiar with each other. So the more of like a deeper, more intimate, more close understanding partnership it is, the more that things will come up because there's such a like entanglement, right? Of like two literally like thinking about all the atoms just interacting with each other. And where there is a fork in the road is basically as these things come up, it's the fork in the road is where you choose to either go down the path of fear in the stories and play out the stories of fear again, or to go down the path of love. And that is what determines the outcome of so many of these conversations and the general energy behind the relationship and the difference between things, consistently taking the wrong, bad, unfun, difficult turn and things taking the turn that's more like a hard conversation brings us closer together and doesn't mean that our relationship is broken. And I really want to harp on this because something that really I feel very blessed about and that I've learned from my relationship is that I feel like from the beginning, my partner really did a good job of establishing this idea that like, we're together. I love you, you love me. We're going to sort shit out. And if I bring something up, and if we talk through something or have to have an argument, a fight, whatever, this is because we are here to make this partnership grow. So I really was able to see how you can be so deeply rooted in love and acceptance of each other and still address the things that annoy you or the things that are problematic or the things that you really need to cut the shit with, right? And this is where I think like this idea of like, oh, it has to be love, it has to be in love. We like think that that means everything is soft and we can like never bring shit up and we should never argue. Like number one red flag of relationships is when you never argue or like disagree on things because that means you're keeping them inside and letting it fester. And so I think this is really important because in terms of you're in control of you, right? This is about what you are going to bring to your relationship. So it has nothing to do with where your partner's at, right? Think about just how you can shift the energy to one of when I work on my inner love and inner acceptance and understanding of my partner and come to it truly from a vibration of love, then I can help to write the story in my partner's mind that they are still whole, they are still lovable, even when we're arguing, shit is hitting the fan, we're dealing with an emergency, I'm on edge today because work was hard. These are really important stories to help write for each other. So one kind of just tangible takeaway is like, even just addressing this with words, because that's sometimes the simplest way to do it, is to think about how when you do bring things up or when it is time to have a hard conversation, like maybe give those qualifying, statements of like, this does not at all change the way I see you. Like this does not at all impact the way that I love you, how much I love you, right? I just want to talk about this because I want us to grow. I want us to evolve, whatever. And I think having that switch in framework will enable you to stop shying away from the hard conversations that are like waiting to happen that will bring more connection and depth and closeness and love, right? Like the non-peaceful conversations are often the ones that bring the most peace after they're done. That is something really, really worth exploring because so much of the things that pop up and are like little annoyances that you just don't know where they're coming from are because we've let it ride silently inside of us. And we're just like, yeah, no, it's fine. I won't bring it up. Like, no, I'll never say this. It'll be fine. And then like years down the line, you're like, why the fuck am I have all this repressed anger? And it comes out of nowhere. And then it's like a lot harder to deal with. So being honest, direct, and real with your partner does not negate the love you have for them. In fact, being willing to be real and deep and confront things is what creates the deepness and the love. That's like a positive reinforcement that the scaffolding is even stronger. Number 2, accept your partner as they are and stop trying to change them. This is so hard because we are so conditioned to, it's like we're conditioned to be conditional with our partner and to like love them, but be like, but also it'd be better if you did this. And the thing is, it's like so much nuance here, and it's really important to not like negate one entire idea just because you're working on this arena too. What I mean by that is like accepting your partner as they are, but then also knowing when it's okay to bring something up, right? To address like, hey, can you stop leaving the dishes overnight, blah, 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 whatever, or even like deeper than that. But working on, it's like picture it like this. There's the actual thing you're talking about or addressing, and then there's the energy underneath it. You want to work on the energy underneath it because this is like the playing field you're on, and then the players move around, the game switches and whatever. And like that can all go fine. But the field needs to be from a place of love and acceptance because that is what feeds the energy. And if you can at least attempt to accept your partner for who they are, you're going to give yourself a chance to see how that changes the dynamic, the energy, right? We're all energy readers. Our partners can tell when we're trying to change them and morph them into something, and it does not feel good. Like, think about how in the past, if you've experienced a time where you can just tell someone is trying to change you, it just doesn't really feel that good. So energetically, things shift when we let our partner go on their journey and have that quirk that kind of pisses us off, but focus on how we are bringing a projection of the experience to it. Like really doing that internal piece of how can I accept this and accept their journey? It just changes so much about how the field is looking. And then when the players come on and the game is going and it's halftime and or it's you're at the shootouts and like these things are happening, the field is like good to go and is coming from a place of love. So then when you do talk about shifts and opportunities for growth, you are coming from this place of still accepting and loving who they are. And I also would say it is shocking how much our partner, it seems like they almost change when we stop trying to change them. And it's this very interesting unseen energy that I'm really curious if you've had an experience with this, of just like how much things shift from starting from the energetic place of just being like, you know what, hands up, I'm not going to try to morph them into something because they are perfect as they are. And they are like, if I truly love them, it means that I can let them be who they are and I don't need to change them into something else. And that helps you to be in a more loving, accepting place, which has a very positive feedback loop on your partner. A really great way to accept and understand your partner is through human design. And I want to give this example because it's so powerful and tangible. Sometimes like there's these little quirks or things or like patterns that our partner does. And maybe in the past we would think that it's problematic depending on how we function and how we think they should function. And then you look at their human design and you're like, oh my God, this is actually literally who they are. An example of this is I learned last year about Milan having a defined throat in human design. In human design, you have your body graph. There's all these different energy centers in it. Some of them are white, some of them are colored in. And there's one that's the throat. And some of us have it defined and undefined. Undefined is when it's white, defined is when it's colored in. And Milan's is colored in. And the thing about having a defined throat is these people basically like are just going to have a much more natural urge and inclination to speak their mind, speak their ideas, speak their perspective, and kind of have more of like a charge behind wanting to be wanting to get their perspective out and make sure that they've fully been able to say it. Versus an undefined throat, you might notice like you should check it. If you have an undefined throat, it's kind of like interesting to compare maybe someone that you know that has a defined throat. It's like, yes, everybody universally wants to feel seen and heard, but there is a bit of a different energetic experience where if I'm like trying to explain something in a concept and someone's not getting it, it doesn't really feel like a lot of charged energy in me. I'm just like, okay, it's fine. Like, it's okay. It's whatever. Like, I do me. I have my internal understanding. That's enough. So the point is, without delving into that too much, I really was able to accept that Milan is someone who actually really cares about getting things out and wants to make sure he can like fully express through his throat. And so then in the future, when he was like really hammering home a point or really like trying to explain something to me, I was like, oh, okay, I just need to listen. I just need to like let him express it, give him the space for that and not take it personally that he's like trying to, say something to me and make sure that I get like make it personal, right? So that's the point, is like you can just see how your partner naturally is designed to act, and then it takes out the judgment because you're not making it personal or like writing a whole story about it. Another good example is knowing if your partner has a defined emotional center or not. This is the solar plexus. The names are basically is you're quote unquote non-emotional if you have a white emotional center and you are emotional if you have a defined one. And the short of it is basically if your partner has a defined emotional center, like they're going to have their own emotional waves that they are dealing with all the time versus a white emotional center, quote unquote, non-emotional. It's not that you don't feel emotions. It's just like by default, you are much more of like a calm, collected lake, but you're going to take on other people's moods and amplify them. So to just finish out this example, in a partnership, if there are two undefined emotional centers, it's actually really interesting because you're going to pick up on whatever moods the partner has picked up on and say like brought home from work, and then you're going to amplify it, and then they might pick up on what you've amplified, and it kind of spiral. But if you bring in that awareness that you have an open emotional center and say your partner has a defined one, then you can be like, okay, they're going through their own thing. This has nothing to do with me. Like they're riding their own emotional wave. The emotions I'm feeling are not mine, yada, yada, yada. So really tangible way to just get more like understanding and accepting of your partner is to know their human design, because there's so much in it that just helps you be like, oh, this is actually a gift of theirs that they are learning to express, and they're just in the shadow expression and they're learning to do it in the light expression. But like everybody's on a journey, we're not perfect, right? So it just takes out like the charge and the negativity and the judgment on things that we before maybe just misunderstood about our partner. I think that's a really, really helpful one. And then the third lesson, this I love. This is from A Course in Miracles, and it's that there is no other shoe. So I'm going to read a little section of A Course in Miracles here, the Made Easy companion version. This section called No Other Shoe. Many people tense up when things start to get good in their lives. They are waiting for the other shoe to drop. The idea is that if you get too happy, someone or something will come along and cut you down. This belief is one of the ego's favorite ploys. The ego is threatened by happiness because it believes that if you get too happy, it would be out of a job. So it seeks ways to drag you down if you begin to step out of misery. There is no other shoe. Well-being is your natural state and all you deserve. The Course implores you to remember God's will for me is perfect happiness. Fear and pain, not joy, are the anomalies. That is such an important lesson to remember, because that is one of the biggest ways that we play into fear, is by thinking that when a relationship is going well and things are going beautifully and it's all highs, that there's going to be a blowout coming soon. And what I would ask you is, what if your anticipation of a blowout is the thing that caused it? Now, the deeper layer to this is to actually understand that things ebbing and flowing is also not a bad thing, right? So if in our mind we're waiting for the shoe to drop, that would mean that once we have an ebb in the relationship where something does come up, that means that something is wrong or that the relationship is shit now and we fucked up, right? That's not true. So it's like if you argue or something comes up, the whole point is that your story and your meaning about that thing are more important than the thing itself. This is something I'm really, really practicing, because this is one of those ways, again, that fear comes in and kind of like tricks you, and is where your ego, thinks that like it's never going to have anything to do if you're happy all the time. And the whole point is to also not ascribe meaning, negative meaning, to like tiffs or things happening or just life coming at you, because it's gonna ebb and flow, but that doesn't mean that there's another shoe that's gonna drop, right? It doesn't mean that suddenly the love is gone. And I think that's really important, because it lets the relationship ebb and flow, and it lets things continue to happen from a place of love, because you are not suddenly injecting the story of fear into it, which would add other iterations to it. And yeah, I'm just really seeing this in my own relationship and appreciating how we can like have a little tiff or address something and then fully move on from it. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't suddenly love me anymore. Like saying it out loud makes it so silly, to realize that belief is just not true. But yeah, that's one of the ways that fear comes in and takes the driver's seat, is that idea that the other shoe is going to drop, and that if things get good, you better watch out, like something's going to crash. But what if it doesn't have to crash? Or what if the crash doesn't mean anything bad? That's the idea, is like things can continue to be love informed even as life happens. So those are the 3 lessons. Those are the things to reflect on in relationships. And yeah, there really is such power to bringing this awareness to fear versus love in your relationship. Obviously, like you can expand this out to life in general, but yeah, seeing how the sneaky fear has come into the door is so key because it changes the energy that you operate from, and it starts to help bring love into the equation. The second that you see something is tinged by fear, then you can bring love into it and say, "It's okay, fear. I see you. We're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Let's work on this together. It's going to be all right." And just by doing that, things change. That is that on relationships and lessons from A Course in Miracles and moving to love away from fear. The other thing that I wanted to say is if you guys have been following along, or even if you're new here, I've been talking a lot about human design because it's something I've incorporated into my business. I've officially become a certified human design reader, and I have had a lot of incredible insights and epiphanies and ideas come to me in terms of how human design can help you in your life. And so what I want to talk to you really quickly about, and I'm bringing this up because I would love to hear what you think about this, and that is this idea that as creatives and entrepreneurs, a lot of the time we are looking for the answers outside of us for how to best operate, like how to find flow, how to get ideas, how to get inspired, how to post on TikTok. Like we have all these questions about how do I best do something? And we tend to look to other people for the answer, which is very normal because successful people tend to have great practice. They've gone through it. They can give you valuable insights. However, there's an element of carving your own path and your own success that requires you to actually stop looking to everybody else for advice and to finally turn inward and create your own blueprint and your own way of doing things. And the way that human design comes into this is what's so fascinating is every single one of us functions a little bit differently depending on our open and closed energy centers. This is just one part of it. We also operate differently depending on our personality profile, the way that the lines in our chart work, the channels, the gifts, all the things. It's so deep. But what's really interesting is the other day, Nikki was like, is there a part of the human design chart that has to do with inspiration and getting ideas? And I was like, yes, there is. And it's the crown center that if you have it open, it kind of like needs stimulation. And it's like the idea of going to a coffee shop and then like getting super inspired to work on something or going for a walk or whatever, versus the closed crown kind of is like self-inspired and can just come up with something by sitting on the couch, to keep it very brief. So the point is, I was just thinking through how every single center has some connection to the creative process, entrepreneurial process, just the process of coming into yourself and really becoming the creative genius that you are. So I am in the early stages of creating a very powerful transformative program that would basically teach you how to become your own creative genius in a way that is so inwardly focused that you are able to tap into flow, tap into ease, to get powerful ideas, to innovate in your field, to really just be a creative genius that is not copying, not comparing to other people. And I think that's so revolutionary because of how much the creative process is feeling a bit like lost and like you're not sure if you're doing it right or if it's going to yield to success or whatever, right? So I would love to know how this is landing for you. And if you're interested, send me a DM because I really think this is going to change our entire relationship to creativity and make it so much more personal and so much more aligned, because the paradigm and the time of comparing and outsourcing our formula of success to somebody else, it's over. It is not working anymore. And if you want to create a sustainable form of creativity, a sustainable business, something that is really from your heart, from you, then you got to know yourself. You got to know how you function. And human design is one of the best, if not the best way to do it because of how practical and how tangible it is to put into practice. So let me know what you think about that. I would love to know if it's interesting to you. And while I'm here, if you are interested in learning more about human design, I have so many new offers in the human design world to bring to you. I'm doing digital readings that are basically like custom, thorough explanations that put your design all together. So it's not just the elements in a silo like you would kind of get if you just do, a random app reading, but it like brings it all together and ties it into a pretty bow so you can actually see how you work. And then I'm doing basically these calls that I call a soul sync, where you can get clarity and next steps and really just build up some confidence on any areas that feel unclear to you, obviously using your design. And I'm also doing creative mentorship through the lens of design, where we're really going to up level your intuition, your creative flow, your confidence, your magnetism, all the things on your journey as a creative. So thank you for letting me share all of those. If you're still listening, I freaking love you. And yeah, send me a message about how this episode landed for you, about any of the things that I've shared so far. And if this was valuable to you, definitely send it to a friend. Thank you so much for your time. I freaking love you, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Goodbye.